Welcome to the Big Life Podcast, where dreams aren't just imagined, they're built brick by brick, belief by belief. Hosted by Neal Oates Jr. and Robin Lewis, this show is your invitation to discover your amazing capabilities, invest in your growth, and unleash your potential in ways you've only dreamed of. Join Neal and Robin as they dive deep into stories, insights, and tools designed to inspire you to show up big, live intentionally, and give yourself away for the betterment of those around you. Get ready to rise to what you're truly worthy of. The Big Life starts now.
Welcome to the Big Life Podcast, ladies and gentlemen. This episode is going to be something a little different. Robin and I are just having a conversation, and we're going to let you all listen in. So check out this episode of the Big Life Podcast. I like the way you think, the way you like hit the record before you even keep going with this. Boy, you did hit me with you hit Neal Oates with the Neal Oates. I love it. No, so this is where I say this whole thing is evidence of nothing but God, right? So Richard Waystack, we were attending the event in Vegas, right, with Celebration. Richard Waystack, who I've got to meet through Kim Knapp at the things that I was doing in Jacksonville, the bar camps that we were doing in Jacksonville, became very good friends with Richard. Richard sees us at the CRS event in Vegas. He's like, hey, do you know Amy Stair? I'm like, no. He's like, do you know Star Power? I'm like, of course I know Star Power. That's what got me into my mental place in real estate, to know this. That's how I was trained and brought up. So we start doing, so he makes the introduction to wife and I, to Amy. And she was like, hey, I'm going to sit in one of your sessions at this event. We're like, okay. She sits in the session and loves it ever since then. So we've supported one of her Kilimanjaro kids charities, to sponsor a kid over in Kilimanjaro. And so then we, it was like, hey, Neal, I think you're really, really good. Let me give you some free coaching. Gives me some coaching, bounce some ideas off. And she was like, yeah, you're good at real estate, but that's not your space, right? Like, yeah, you do it. You're good at it. I'm like, I know, I don't want to do real estate, right? I want to help and share and pour into people. She was like, absolutely. So that's where the confidence came. Even more of the confidence came with the World Renowned Coaching and Consulting. And then, so yesterday, as we are doing, Amy's plan was, Neal, as soon as she found out about the book, hadn't read anything about the book. She knew the title, and she was like, you're going to be a keynote speaker in Salt Lake City. I was like, Amy, did you hear the title of the book? She was like, absolutely. She was like, I know you, though. I know what, I don't know what's in the book, but I know what's in you. And if you take what's in you and put it between the covers, we're going to be good. And so that's what happened. She was one of the early readers like yourself who read the book, and she was like, yeah, we're doing this. And then it was not my plan. It was Amy's idea to wait to announce that I was going to be a keynote speaker until yesterday when the book released. And so once it rolled out and it hit the bestseller status, I let Amy know. She's like, Neal, we're about to drop the announcement right now. So they send out the email to everyone that's in the Star Power Network, hundreds of the top agents in the country. And then, of course, I do my piece on social media, like, hey, it keeps getting better. Like, God is winning. God is showing you guys what happens when you're faithful, when you're diligent, when you're praying, when you're committed and obedient. And would you know, wife and I, we go to dinner last night. As we're leaving dinner, I see a phone number. It is the phone number of the guy that gave me my start in real estate. I saw the number, and I remember his number because I was giving his number out and answering his phone for 8.5 years. So I don't have his name in my phone, but I looked at it. I went like this. I said, there's no way. He leaves me a voicemail. Hey, man, congratulations. I see you doing a lot. I'm here in Vegas at this event. When I come back, let's have lunch. I think I saw your name on a Star Power thing. What's that about? Right? And so he introduced me to Star Power because as he and his partner are doing business, they don't have time to just train me in everything. So we had the CDs and the cassettes where it was, hey, You want to know about real estate? Listen to the Crockett team, listen to David Benton, listen to these people. And so I'm listening to them, not knowing that 17 years later, I'm going to be seeing these people. I'm sitting front row recording the Star Power Stars, Sam Miller, and all of these people that helped me get into the industry. And so when I say that Amy doing that yesterday and then me getting that phone call from my mentor, the guy that gave me the start in the industry, that's one of those things where you sit back and like, man, God, I had no idea. Like you can't, the best director couldn't direct a script. The best writer couldn't write a script better than what God has written. And when I say that, it is exciting, scary at the same time, because once again, when God starts answering prayers, it's one of those things where I know the size of the prayers that I've prayed. And I'm like, man, God, if you could do this like it's nothing, right? All of this happened in, I'm going to say in one day. Now, it didn't happen in one day, but we saw a glimpse of his power, his greatness, his authority in one day, in a matter of hours. And I'm sitting here and I'm like, okay, well, the other stuff I prayed for, I've really got to make sure that I'm ready for it, because he's ready to give it. I've got to make sure I'm ready for it, because it could be so big that it just blows my mind.
Wow.
And it feels like, even though me knowing that it wasn't a suddenly, that I did my part and I did work and I did do what God told me to do and be obedient in the face of adversity and doubt and fear and lack of support, it felt like a suddenly yesterday, because things just were happening so fast. Even the stuff that I knew was happening, like I knew I was a keynote speaker, but knowing it and then having it being shared with the world, and
Yes.
then having the world acknowledge it is different.
Yes, yes. Wow, that's so powerful. I know you're a Napoleon Hill fan, or Henry David Thoreau, which is one of my favorite quotes. I know you know it, but I want to ask you, because to me it feels like this is it right here. If one advances confidently
Come
in
on, sir.
the direction of their dreams and endeavors to live the life that he has imagined, he will meet with success unexpected in the common hour.
Robin, I'm sitting here, and here's what's wild. I continue to preach, and I was talking to my agents this week. Hey, we just have to master the mundane. Just be consistent, keep your head down. It's not the sexy stuff. Make sure your integrity is locked in, that you keep your word with yourself. If you keep your word with yourself, it's going to be easy to keep your word with others. If you do the boring stuff behind the scenes, like I continue to say, for 8.5 years, no one knew who I was other than my name at the bottom of an email signature, right? Because I was behind the scenes doing this work. But now I sit back and I look at how much I know about contracts. We were looking at 20 or 30 contracts a day, right? So I know how the as is and the crisp contract look and work. I found out what good negotiation versus bad negotiation, because I was a witness to so many of them. I know what good property and conversation and all that looks like. But it was me just being in university for 8.5 years behind the scenes. And then it's now people are like, hey, wait, where did you come from? Um, okay, are you the guy? But then when I say certain things, right, you could tell the room that you're in when you say a few things and people say, hold on, are you, do you know this? I'm like, absolutely. How do you know that? This. Then all of a sudden, a different switch hits for them. And they say, oh, so you're not like everyone else. You understand at a higher level. And so that has been exciting to me. Also, on the flip side, I was talking to one of my friends, and the wife knows this. There are some people that you just think are going to help and be on your side and support. And so far, they've just been silent, right? And I know that everyone has life going on, but, and you know, we always say, especially as we're going through books and on the podcast, that with the exception of one person, the world does not revolve around us, right? And so that's something that I'm having to mature in and say, okay, well, there could be a very valid and good reason why I have not heard or seen the support from them. And even if it doesn't come, if it never comes, I have to be confident. I have to know that God's supporting me. And it's kind of hard to be frustrated when things are just going really, really well.
So, sir, you talk a little bit about, and I think it's just good while it's fresh like this, but you talk about, it's scary at the same time because you
Mm-hmm.
recognize that God is in it. And so if God is in it, that means that, this is big. This could get way bigger. This could help me to, I've heard John Maxwell say that you got to have God room, right? I've heard John Maxwell say that he doesn't need an alarm clock in the morning because when he wakes up, he gulps because of the big that's ahead of him,
Mm-hmm.
right? So in other words, it's scary. How can you kind of describe that? Describe what you are actually. So you have something successful now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Best-selling author, you know, keynote doing the keynote that for a company that you started your roots in, that is, in terms of training, that you're now the one that other people are going to be listening to. You're
Right.
providing the training. So I mean, you're experiencing success, right? Just those two
Mm-hmm.
things alone, and there's a whole lot more. But yet, you also are a little bit scared.
Yeah. So the first thing that is forcing me to do is to go in and study more, right? Because anytime, and this is where I know that God doesn't need me, but He uses me, and I want to make sure that I am being used to the best of my ability, and that I don't want God's reputation to take a hit because I was not prepared, right? And so this is where I always say that, hey, I know I put a lot on God because I'm like, hey, this is not for me. This is, if it's going to happen, it has to be God. Well, God is like, hey, son, I'm doing my part. Now, when they look at you, they need to see me. And so the amount of preparation that has gone into it recently, especially yesterday. And here's what's wild. My book, right? Okay, my book, but I'm going in and I am highlighting. I'm going in and studying my book again, making sure that I really am holding firm, that I know this stuff as well as I did when I wrote. So if we're going to be studying Dr. Maxwell, then I have to study the things that I wrote if I really believe it's going to make an impact. And yesterday alerted me to the fact, hey, you're going to be in front of more people than you ever thought possible. You better know your stuff, kid. And so I went in and I'm highlighted. Now, wife, of course, we have two different opinions when it comes to books. My best friends are this right here and this right here when it comes to books. I have a green pen. I always make sure I write in green. Green is the color of growth, prosperity, money. And then I have my highlighter. If my wife sees me near any of her books, I better not have a pen or a highlighter because she is like, books are not to be written in. They are not to be highlighted. Me, on the other hand, I'm highlighting, I'm making notes, coming back,
Mark it
and
up.
mark it up, right? So I look at every book as a workbook. And so I've gotten to dive in. And actually, here's something that I am most nervous and excited about is that in 2 weeks, I'm going to be leading a book study. I'm part of a book club, the Men Seeking Wisdom book club. We just finished When God Winks by Squire Rushnell. And so that was a great book. We're taking this Sunday off. Next Sunday, we start on the affluent Negroes. And I am leading the book study, and the guys are excited. And they're like, oh,
Yeah.
man, we can't wait to get this book. And now that they have it, they're like, oh, we're diving in, and we can't wait to see what the author put in the book, but we also can't wait to see why he thought this was important and what he left out of the book that he couldn't get inside of those 30,000 words. And so that's another reason why I'm diving in. And then we've got some bonus material that we're going to be recording. We've got the Affluence in Action workshop that we're going to be doing on, I believe it's March 3rd, for those who purchased the pre-order of the book. And we'll be announcing all of that in the next couple of weeks, or next couple of days, I should say. And it is really forcing me and encouraging me and making me be the person that I say I am in that book. And while I know I'm that guy most of the time, now it's right here and it's in front of me. And I want to make sure that I hold up my end of the bargain.
Wow. So what jumps out at you? So first of all, let me just say, so reminder, when God winks, it just coincidentally are doing that book just around the time when your book is coming out, and coincidentally the book is coming out on the day of your wife's birthday.
Right.
And now coincidentally, God is winking as your book is actually, wow, the book that you guys are going to be studying as a group.
And so real quick, Robert, the guys, they're a lot like you, right? So when the moment I announced the release date, they were like, "Oh, that's our next book." I said, "Hold on, wait a minute. Now, I get no say in this." They're like, "Nah, you get no say." Sort of like how you were like, "Neil, we got like, dude, we're sitting here talking about books and talking about great impact, and you're not we're not going to discuss yours." And I was like, "No, Robin, we're not." Well, they did not take no for an answer, just like you didn't take no for an answer. And this is where the very first principle, network strategically, making sure that you are connected with people who will force you and encourage you to be better is like, I really think that is the game changer. So many of us try to do life on our own. We do life with the wrong people. So we either try to do it by ourselves or with the wrong people. And then we're curious and we wonder and we're upset at the results that we get. Having a strong group of, for me, godly men in my life, number one, and then having other people who know more than I know and who have done more than I've done, who want to see me win. Like, the list is so extensive, Robin, that it is humbling when I see the caliber of people, whether it's Amy, Deborah, Teresa, John, you, Fremo, Jerome. I'm looking around, Sachs. I look around and I see all these guys and all these people, and I'm like, wow. Like, it's almost impossible for a person to fail if they have God, ambition, and a ironclad group of people around them. It's hard to fail.
So maybe just say those three again: God,
God, ambition,
ambition.
and then an ironclad dirty dozen, a group of people who are just going to be your foundation. And so with the God piece, we understand that, but you also have to do your work, right? And so this is, I keep going back to even in the book, I mention it, the parable of the talents, right? So God gave them, the leader, the master gave them something, but the one who didn't have ambition, he had everything taken from them. And so I think so many of us say, well, we have God and we have people around us who want us to win, but we've seen this before, right? I continue to mention one of my friends for 20 plus years, Fremo. The thing we're on now is, I can't drag you to greatness, right? It doesn't matter how much I want it for you. If you're not going to walk and do the work, if you're not going to have ambition and discipline and then make concerted efforts to be better, we can't drag you to greatness. So God, ambition, and then you just have your people. And that people part is so important because for me, I've been blessed to have God in the people who are around me. Right. And so that's a twofold thing right there. Now that I look and see when I feel like, man, I don't feel like listening to God. I don't feel like, and that happens, right? I don't feel like being obedient. And then I'm like, man, I'm just going to do it on my own power. And then I talk to you. Well, God is speaking through Robin. And now I'm sitting here like, man, that's so frustrating because I could be frustrated with God, but I can't be frustrated with God and Robin and Fremo and Deborah, right? And then it's just like, okay, Neil, what are you going to do? And so that's when I'm like, okay, I give in and I do what I'm supposed to. And I think that's vital for all of us to really have those people in our lives. And we talk about it, and it doesn't matter the book we talk about. And that's the beauty. It's a principle. Do life with people who can help you do life better. Life is going to be better.
Yeah. Yeah. People like John Maxwell said it's the number one business decision that he's made is to build long-lasting, meaningful relationships. That
And that's probably going to take more out of him than anything else. Building long lasting relationships is challenging. It is work, but it is worth it. And so many of us, we're just holding on to those relationships that didn't work. And we remember that stuff and the pain we felt when things went wrong. But Dr. Maxwell, he knows. And this is what, like, the best amongst us have left clues. They had not only have left clues, they are telling us overtly, if you want to win, do this. And we're like, we want to win, but I don't want to do that. And we're like, so do you really want to win?
wow. Yeah, it's true, man. You know, this. So somebody said you come back to your why, right? That's do you really want? What do you really want? And that's the win. That's where it ties in there, right? So
Yeah.
the why is so important. Sir, how would you encourage somebody now, like where you are? And I know you're still on the journey, so I don't want to
Mhm.
sound like um, you have arrived, but this is a major rung in the ladder. I know you're still climbing, but in other words, we're in this landing place right now. How would you encourage others? What would you say to encourage people now where you are right now?
This is so I've heard a couple of things, and the beauty is we continue to say it. Be a reader, number one. I encourage everyone to be a reader because as you're reading, something happens in the atmosphere, in the universe, in your spirit. I think be a reader. But the main thing that and the reason I say that is I read that my crazy ideas are not for me. They're for others to see what's possible. Right. And so it's a crazy idea. And I shared with you that 10 years ago, I was writing an affirmation that I am a best-selling, world-renowned author, speaker, and elite broker. And I've said that probably hundreds of thousands of times. I'm a best-selling, world-renowned author, speaker, and elite broker. And so my encouragement to people would be to think of the biggest, wildest, craziest thing that you can think of, that you can dream of. And the encouragement is that's still smaller than what God has for you. Right. And so I reminded my team last night when I got the number one bestseller badge from Amazon in 7 powerful
Come
categories.
on now.
7 powerful categories, right? And in fact, I want to make sure that I read those categories out. So, and this is not ego. This is confidence and just a reminder. So Amazon bestseller in finance, business life, personal success, business and investing, motivational growth, wealth management, and business mentoring and coaching.
Come on
So
now.
but what you don't see, you don't see thumb twiddling, right? We are not seeing a basket weaving in there for bestseller. But the reason I say that is even when I wrote, I'm a best-selling world-renowned author, speaker, and elite broker. I wrote it, but did I really think it would happen? Yes. Did I think it would happen this way, this time? No. I thought I would be an 80-year-old guy, right, with a book, and I might get to enjoy the results, the fruits of this for a year or two, right? For me being a lot younger than 80, this is exciting. But the encouragement will come in that no matter what your dream is, dream bigger, right? Man, dream bigger. And that's coming from a guy who has really big, crazy dreams. And I thought that I could dream big. I thought being a best-selling author was a big dream. It is so small, right? Uh, it's very, very small for it to happen the way it did. And I say that it happened suddenly with his help. So now I've got to go and in my goals book where I write down all of my goals, I was able to mark off 3 or 4 goals just around the launch of this book. And so I had a total of 92 goals that I wanted to reach. I have accomplished about 30 of them. And so now I've got to go in and write some bigger dreams down because I see now that I'm going to hit a few of these goals in the next couple of weeks just because I was obedient and because this thing happened yesterday.
Wow. So 92, and
Mm-hmm.
you've knocked off 30 something of them,
Yes.
and you see several of them happening in the next couple of weeks, and so you want
Mm-hmm.
to even set higher ones. You
I
want to
mean,
dream bigger yourself.
because I have not even marked off the keynote a national conference, right? Because that's not happening until July. So I know that when July comes, that one's gone. There are a couple others, right? For instance, I want to be Florida Realtor Educator of the Year. And here's what's wild. I was a national instructor of the year. I've been my local instructor of the year, but I haven't been the state educator of the year. So that's something that I want. And the reason I want it, and I want it to be clear if this is ever played back and if someone ever listens to this, I want it to be clear why I want this. I just really want people to see what's possible when you pray, when you're obedient, and when you have the right people in your life, right? If you follow God and if you're obedient to what he says, I just believe that we are supposed to be trailblazers. I believe that every victory that I have is a new possibility for someone who didn't even think it was possible. Right. And if I continue to do that, and so I know it looks like from the outside, Neal is shining the light on him, but I want people to hear my heart. I want you to see what's possible what happened for me so you know what's possible for you. Because you and I know, we know that God is no respecter of person. It doesn't matter how high you are, how low you are. God loves you. You're his son or daughter, and he wants what's best for you. There are people who know me, Robin, who are going to say, there's no way that he could do this. It has to be something bigger than him. And that's what I want. Right. And even when I want to have a history, a foundation of, man, whether it was him getting a free coffee, he was saying, man, praise be to God, right? Or if he's getting that really big $66 million thing that I'm planning for, that I've been praying for, they're like, man, it has to be God. To those things, that prayers that you know, personal prayers that we're praying for, I want them to say, it has to be God, right? Because I just believe that that's the piece. That's the part that if people start trying to say, well, how did this turn into this? They're going to try to rationalize, but then I want them to say there has to be something that we can't understand, something we can't explain. And that one thing is going to be that God in the middle.
Wow. Amen to that, brother. Wow. And that's, that is something that, I think you're going to get the opportunity to share, like you're going to get the opportunity to share your faith.
Yeah.
Yeah. There is something that happens, I think, when you have gained people's respect, that the message that you share is a little bit more concrete. It's a little bit more meaningful. Um, people listen, and I think, so to hear you say that today, I believe that that's a message you are going to get the opportunity to share more and more, and it's going to be meaningful. It's going to impact people's lives. I know your faith, and I believe what you're saying to be true, but there is something that happens when you are living your faith, and it is happening, that multiplies that even more, the impact of that.
So on Sunday, I got chastised by some of my guys in my prayer partners group, Robin. So we meet with our lead pastor. We pray with him in the morning. And one of the guys, well, a few of them are really close friends. And I had given them, one of them purchased the book. One of them is like a father figure mentor guy. So I gave him a book and he's been reading it. They're like, Neal, this is good stuff. Well, one of the guys is sitting next to me was like, Neal, well, there's a guy between us. He's like, I love the book. He says, fantastic job. What you did with that is nothing short of brilliant. And the guy that's in between, he was like, what book is this? And I look at the first guy and I'm like, man, why did you do that? Right. And he was like, Pastor Neal's book. And he says, Pastor Neal, you wrote a book and you ain't share it with the group. I'm like, shh, would you be quiet? Right. And so then I make sure that I give Phil a copy of the book. And he was like, why aren't you telling? He was like, man, this is awesome. And besides one, the title, The Affluent Negroes, right? But then I was telling him, it's one thing if the world thinks that you suck. Like we could deal with external people just think, oh, he's trash, he's garbage. But then when your friends read it and be like, oh, you're horrible. This was the worst book I've ever read. It cuts different. But the real reason I have not even shared it with many people at our church, our campus pastor, he's gotten it, he's read it, and he's like, Neal, this is some great stuff, was because of the audience, right? So yes, as a Christian, as a believer, I love other Christians. I root for them, but this is not for them, right? This is for my audience that I already have, the business world, especially the minorities in the business world. If I can give them medicine that tastes like candy, if I might be the first exposure to they have to love, to belief, to self-confidence, to these ideas that we as Christians are already supposed to have because they all have biblical foundations and roots. If I can use my business prowess, the trust and respect that they have for me in the secular world to open up their minds just a little bit. And then for them to say, well, I don't know if I believe all of this stuff, but I want prosperity. I want material wealth. I'll try this stuff out. And then if they just start to come around, because the beauty is, it's simple. I want it easy enough for the layperson, for everyday people like myself to understand, but it's so simple that you're going to have to go back and implement and practice these steps over and over. And you're going to have to open up the book and you want the principle, but you've got to read the scripture that the principle references. right? And so that's where, and Robin, this is not the book that I wanted to write. This is not the one that my head wanted to write. Neal Oates wanted to write the money book that was going to attract everyone and that I knew in my limited knowledge would shoot up and be a bestseller. And for God to say, do it my way. If you do it my way, let's just see what happens. And I'm blown away, dude. I am blown away.
Wow. Yeah, a couple of things. Real quick, remind me, what was the difference, your way versus God's way, in terms of the book?
Okay,
Just
so
highlight some of the things for
So
me.
the first one was, I'm not going to share the title because that book is coming, ladies and gentlemen. But the whole thing it was not biblically based, the foundation. So this is where people like you and Amy had, because you all saw the first read of some stuff and y'all were like, oh, that's good. And I was convicted. So the first thing, the idea, the overarching idea was the same, but I was afraid to mention the source. Right? So what does the Bible say? If you're ashamed to own me before man, I'll be ashamed to own you before my Father. So it was one of these things where, Robin, when I say that this thing has wrecked me and said, do I really believe what I say I believe? Yes, I believe you are all powerful, all knowing, everyone at one time. I believe that you own everything, that at the blink of an eye, at a whisper, you could change everything. But I don't know. It's kind of risky to say that the reason for my success is the Bible, our scriptures, our God, Jesus Christ, right? In real estate, where we have these code of ethics and the Fair Housing Act and all this stuff, if you violate this, you could be canceled, right? As a minority, I know that a big part of my success is tied to those who don't look like us, who don't believe what I believe. Are you really going to risk frustrating them, getting them upset, making them say, I thought he was for everyone, right? And then as we just saw things with the administration, with diversity, equity, and inclusion being on the burner, right? Saying, hey, is this relevant? Is this valid? So my first thing was, how can I do this? But how can I soften it? How can I make it so that everyone will like it? And then I go back and I say, if you try to be everything for everyone, you'll end up being nothing for no one. And God was like, hey, you say you believe in me. Let me see how much you believe. Do you think that if you mention Jesus, your faith, that you'll win? Or do you believe that if you mention Jesus, God, faith, Bible, scripture, you'll lose? And he put me to the test, and I would like to believe that I've done my part, right? That at the risk of being ostracized, at the risk of being unliked, we mentioned that just off of the name alone, I've had some people come and say, Neal, I can't stand beside you in public, right? Like, we could be friends, but I can't stand beside you in public. And I'm like, oh, that's too bad for you. You're not going to get to stand next to a bestseller. I say that now, not knowing, but it hurts, right? So the biggest difference was the book was going to be, it wasn't going to have an edgy title. It was going to be something that was like, oh, and it was for people to have the same principles, but the idea would be, oh, well, I know where you got that idea from. You got that from Grant Cardone. You got that idea from Napoleon Hill. You got that from W. Clement Stone. I heard Jim Rohn say that, when the truth is, no, this came from the Bible. And so I believe that going that route and being unapologetic about it. And that's why I'm having to go back in and highlight. That's why I'm having to go back in and study, because as this gets bigger than I thought it was going to be, I was worried that I'm going to have to defend and that I'm going to have to justify. And I'm like, I don't have to defend or justify. That's his job. My job is just to repeat what he says, live out, be the example. And yeah. And so while I say, I still believe the first book is going to be a book, right? The one that I wanted to write, but it might not be. Maybe that's something I'm holding on to. And he says, okay, you did it once. Let's see if you could do it again. But I do know this. I do know that this is not a one-time thing. I know that we're coming back with another one.
Right on. Right on, sir. Sir, let me just say this to you too. I understand where you're coming from when you said, it's who you wrote the book for, and it wasn't necessarily the church. But yeah, I just want to say to you, the principles are the principles, and we need it in the church just as much as outside in the marketplace. And so,
Robin, on that,
surprised.
So here's what I'm hoping. I'm hoping and I'm praying, and I not just hope, I really do believe that it's going to it's going to be so impactful to those outside that the inside are going to say, well, hold on, we now want what they have. And my response is going to be, you should already have it, but here it is, right? And so I know with the beauty of social media, it amazes me. I know that we're connected on all social platforms. So you were just getting inundated with stuff. And then you being my boy, I'm just tagging you in everything, right? And you're like, okay, here, 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 here. For many people, yesterday was the first time that they even knew or it came across their eyes, right? And so that's something that's exciting for me because now I know that when we go back to church this week, the conversations can be different, right? And so I think that's the beauty of the way that this has been orchestrated by the team, but then also by God. And so one thing I do want to say, man, that Transcendent Publishing, for them to be some believers over there and to have a title like Transcendent Publishing and for them to support the work, and for the ladies that I've dealt with, that when they read the manuscript and then them giving me feedback and pointers and giving me advice from the position of a believer. Come on, man. Right. And not saying, hey, maybe we should take this out. And now I can't wait for later this week when I publish and post the bestseller graphics that they did. I'm excited to have the publisher's name and logo on there, Transcendent, because man, and I had a decision to make when deciding who I was going to go with. Do I go a different, cheaper route, or do I go a proven route where someone that I looked up to published their book through Transcendent, and to see that and to be reminded that it was a more expensive route, it was the right choice. You reap what you sow, right? What you put out, you're going to get back in. And I just can't wait to really start seeing the fruits, because I know if I put 5 seeds in the ground, I'm not going to get 5 fruits back. I know it's going to come back in multiples. So it's going to be an exciting time. And now I'm really going to have to make sure I leverage my dirty dozen, my foundation, and say, hey, we have opportunities. What do we say yes to and what do we say no to? Knowing and understanding my value, because wanting to help is one thing, but then also knowing that I can't help everyone because there's one of me, and empowering other people around me. And so we're going to have some challenges. They're going to be unique challenges.
I
And
like it.
so
I like it.
now I know that Dr. Maxwell talks about it, right? He wants to be a leader of leaders, right? He doesn't want followers. So now as I rise, the people around me are rising as well. And now things that I can't do, I'm starting to really embrace the fact that my word has value. So now if I say, hey, I can't, but here's who can, and giving someone the same opportunity that people gave me, opening that door and say, have you considered this person? I believe that they would be a good fit. And even doing some of the Black Affluent Summits that we have planned, and having speakers who are going to talk about finance, insurance, branding. That's going to be something that, remember, I was thinking the Black Affluent Summits 7 or 8 years ago. Didn't know how it was going to happen. And now I'm starting to see little pieces. And I have in my book here the map of how things shape out or shape up. And it's challenging, but it keeps me busy every day. And I wake up, as you mentioned, Dr. Maxwell, I wake up and I am ready to go. And sometimes I have to say, hey, okay, hold on, slow down. That's not a now idea. It's a good idea, but it's not a now idea. Let's put it in the book, and then we'll address it later.
Right on, sir. That's it's so cool. I'm actually really glad that we recorded this, because there's some things on here that I would encourage you to share. I think it's so special, and even right now where you are, you're going to be stepping into new areas that you're going to have to go learn. It's going to be testing and failing and learning and improving
The
as
same
you
stuff we talk
go
about on
forward.
the show.
Yeah, as you go forward, so it's so beautiful to see that, for me to experience that, and I think it would be a good thing to share as well. But I'm glad we did it, sir. I just heard John Maxwell say this morning. I was listening to him, and he said, the SW, 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 SW. I know they share it in the real estate field, they share it in the insurance field, they share it out there in the business world. Some will, Some won't. So what? Someone is waiting, and that's what I hear. That theme kind of comes through as I hear your story. Some will, some won't. So what? Someone
Someone is waiting.
waiting. And so yeah, there are people that, so even coming back to the scriptures, sometimes the way you expand or expound upon a principle, a scripture, a truth can reach some people like nobody else will.
Hmm.
That's the reality.
And Robin, that's a part where you ask, how would I encourage people? That's a part that I would encourage people because it has encouraged me. That there are people in this world, in my life, that I am supposed to reach and impact. That if I keep silent, if I don't dream big, if I don't act out my faith and my beliefs, then they are going to be negatively impacted. Because I mean, we all ask this question: who am I to do this? Who am I to be the one to change someone's life? Who am I to encourage someone? Who am I to make a difference? And then, as Marianne Williamson, who are we not to? Right. And so I think that I know who I am, and that's good and bad. I know what I've done. That's good and bad. And so then I start asking myself, well, why would someone listen to me and not listen to God himself? Why would they listen to me and not listen to Solomon? Right? Why would they listen to me and not listen to their mom or dad? And this is where I have to understand that I am just a piece in this thing and I have to do my part. So that has been humbling. That's, once again, that's the excitingly scary part, where if I don't do what I'm supposed to do, and it's not coming from a place of fear, it's coming from a place of, I would say, purpose. And I know, and that's why for a lot of people, I know I'm a lot, right? I know that I'm like, hey, let's go, let's go, let's go, let's go. But then I continue to say October 23rd, 2013. And we're going to talk about this in one of our episodes, one of those incidents that change and transform your life. But October 23rd, 2013 changed my life. And since then, I have been running, even with the bad hip. I was running at a pace that now I start to understand why. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for listening in, for hanging out with Robin Lewis and myself on this episode of the Big Life Podcast. We would be remiss if we didn't leave you like we always do. And that is that we love you. God loves you, and there's nothing you can do about it. And until the next time we see you or you see us, we're right there with you. Peace.